So let's talk about the business card that you're going to be creating using your monogram that you've already made. Now, the examples that I'm going to show are not the only way to do business cards. I've got to emphasize that. That's why I've included a link to my Pinterest board that will show you some other variations. And I want you to be able to experiment and really make this thing your own. Now, with this, there are some standard things on a business card. The first thing is the size. It's 3.5 inches by 2 inches. Now, while most business cards that you'll see are laid out in landscape format, there is a great opportunity to turn it vertically and do it in a portrait layout to be able to kind of experiment with the information and how it's laid out. So you're going to start with creating a 3.5 inch by 2 inch document in either Illustrator or in InDesign. Now, there are multiple crucial elements to put into the business card. The first one is going to be your name and then your job title. Now, the job title for your business card, since most of you don't own your own business, could be a future career that you're interested in, or you can just put student and put other information in there. Now, as far as your information, I want to make sure that we don't use your real last name, but we'll modify it. And same thing with your contact information. Since we're going to be putting this online, I want to make sure that you keep some anonymity, but I'd highly recommend, like I did with the monogram logo, use the first letter of your last name so that it's the same as what's on your monogram. But you'll be putting in your name, your job title, the logo. In this instance, it wouldn't be the company logo. It would be the logo for your monogram. And again, I have to emphasize, it does not have to be laid out this way. Then you'll have contact information, and there's details for that. It could be your social media pieces, your phone number, the email address, the website to your portfolio. You might include a photo, although it's not always required. In fact, I don't see that a lot, but sometimes some people may include a photo. Some people will have like a call to action, like, hire me now or call today for an estimate. For most of your beginning ones, you probably won't have that. And then you'll have this thing called a bleed. A bleed area is going to be, you don't want to basically put the text that you want people to see right up against the edge of the card because it might get cut off if we were to really print these. So examples of front and back. Now you're going to be creating a business card, again, in the standard size of 3.5 inches by 2 inches, either vertically or horizontally. And I want to show you one method of doing this. It's called the invisible square method. It's the idea of taking out of those 3.5 inches, you do 2 inches of it, and you make that the area for your photo or your graphic or something else. You basically don't want to split your information right down the center. It creates an unbalanced feeling where it just doesn't, we don't know what we should look at first or second. With an invisible square, the key thing is you want to make sure that you set up your alignment so it's only going one way. You don't want to have center alignment, left alignment, and right alignment on the same side of a card. You also want to make sure that when you're putting this together, that you're putting your information in a separate text frame or separate text box for each line of information. That way we can move things around, we can modify the fonts easier, and you can line up the text frames. If you're going to put stuff on the right-hand side, that's fine. You can line stuff up to where it's aligned to the right. But again, only one topic per line. And when I mean topic, I'm saying your name should be in one box. Your title should be in another box. Your street address should be in one box. Your city, state, and zip code will be in another text frame. Your phone number will be in its own text frame, and so on. Here's an example with a photo put into that invisible square. You'll notice some of the things that are nice is you're using the idea of proximity by grouping like information together. You're using contrast to decide what do you want people to see more, the type of job you have or your name. It'll vary. It depends. It's not right one way or the other. But one of the things that's kind of nice, and this is just a little side thing I wanted to show you, is whenever you include eyes, if you have eyes in your photo, which you may not have on your business card, use them to your advantage. Notice the height of the name of the dog trainer is the same as the height of the eyes. You have a tendency as a human to look at eyes. You make connections with eyes, so it's something that's kind of useful. And then using the photo as kind of something to go off of, decide on space, the distance between the eyes and the nose creates a nice gap. Again, not required, just an idea to be able to set that up. Same thing if you included a full photo. Notice again, this one has better proximity than the previous one. This is the mailing address. This is email and web and phone number related stuff. And then his name is bolded there. So that's kind of nice. But again, you'll notice the top and bottom margin are exactly the same, but the photo bleeds over that margin. It's better to have that bleed over than to cut it off because it'll look like his arm's cut off, and you don't want to draw attention to that. But then you've got this nice clean line. Now, if you're going to use a full page photo, whether it's a texture or a background, one of the things that you can do is you don't necessarily need the entire photo to be able to tell us what this is about. Maybe it's just that part. And then as far as colors are concerned, you might be able to pull a color from the photo and use that in other places. Like this part here, you could eyedropper up the color from the red and use that in the main company, in the main name. Same kind of thing here. The invisible square doesn't have to necessarily be invisible. So this is just one method of doing it. Like I said, you don't have to use the invisible square method. I will show you other examples in a moment. You can kind of see here, lined up, and information pointing. Sometimes the square isn't even visible, but red, black, and white are pretty powerful. And you can actually make up your own silhouettes just by going into Photoshop, taking a photo, masking it out, turning it into black, and all of a sudden you've got your own layout with information. So let's take a look at what you're going to be putting on your actual business card, and then I'll show you some other examples that are a little more contemporary. So the first thing is right here. You're going to use either Illustrator or InDesign. It's going to be 3.5 inches by 2 inches, portrait or landscape, and you have to include your monogram logo. Now, you might decide to do a two-sided business card. If you do a two-sided business card, you might be able to put your logo on one side and your contact information on the other. Totally appropriate, and I'll show you examples in a minute. You need to have your name, but remember, you're going to modify it so that it's not your actual real name for your last name. Your job title, so that's either future goal, or you can just put down student or something like that. Your address, phone number, your email, and your portfolio address. The only thing on this that should be 100% real is your portfolio address. I want that to be real. Since we're keeping you private in other areas, I still want to be able to have that be the real email, the real website address. Now, like I mentioned, although I typoed here, I'll fix that. It can be a two-sided card. You might find that might give you a little bit more flexibility by having a front and a back. You're going to run out of space. 3.5 inches is not very big, so you may run out of space, and there's a lot of information that goes on the card, so I would recommend making it two-sided. You can use icons for your contact information, little symbols, and I'll show you examples in just a minute. So I do recommend that you use separate text boxes for every line of text, that you pick a sans serif font for your contact information, and do it somewhere between 8 to 10 points. Anything larger than that, it's just going to be way too big and you're going to run out of space. And then I would not use the same font if you used a font on your logo. Don't use that anywhere else. You want to make sure that your logo is unique and special, so don't use the font. Stick with one alignment and then experiment. Make multiple copies of your artboards or your pages, depending on which program you're using, and try some vertical and some horizontal. So, all right, let's take a look at the Pinterest board. I've given you some resources down here. So if you click on the Pinterest board here, you'll see I've posted a lot of different layouts and links to images that you might consider. This is what I was talking about with the icons. Notice there's like an envelope that's next to the email, and there's a monitor for the website, and then there's a little old school phone for the phone number. You don't have to do that, but it's a nice little way to graphically kind of add a little bit of visual interest. You can see on some of these other ones, here's an example of one that's vertical. So the logo is kind of bleeding off towards the top. but really nicely organized down here at the bottom. You've got good, clear hierarchy of the name being the most important, their title being smaller, and then choosing what's the best way for them to get a hold of you. Is it the email? Is it the website? Is it the phone number? You get to choose. So here you can see there are some other cards. You can see front and back. Let me check here. I'm not sure. Looks like it's not showing all of the stuff. So let me click again. There we go. So you can see sometimes there's full photos with text. That definitely would have more information on the back. Over here, it's kind of an interesting mix, kind of like the resume mixed in with the business card. You can see the logo being used on one side, the contact information being used on the other. Some have full photographs. Some are purely graphics. You can see I like this one. This was really cute. Some that are based on illustration. I love that squirrel. That squirrel's awesome. Very, very colorful. But then others might be less colorful and might be just plainly black and white. Now you can pull in a photograph and have a textured background if you want. So it really depends on what you're looking for. So I would recommend before you fully start designing and finalizing stuff, take a look at some of the stuff that I have on my Pinterest board. I am not requiring that you make a Pinterest board. However, if you want to make your own Pinterest board and start to look for business cards to be able to pin here just to get some inspiration, that is totally acceptable, but it's not a requirement for this project, especially since we have a little bit less time to work on this. I want to make sure that I give you enough time to really experiment, and we'll kind of push this a little further. But I would definitely take a look at the resources I've given you. In addition to that, I have a link here. You can download icons for free. So these are tons of different stylized icons that you could either redraw or you can download them and you can place them into your business card. So if you wanted to do social media icons, ones like this, you can pull these into Illustrator or into InDesign and use just a portion of that to be able to really kind of set your card apart, yet still have its own little sense of style. So there's about 60 different pieces here, so you can check that out. I also have a way, since there's a lot of numbers that are on your business card, I've put together a very simple possible number variations. So different ways to be able to make the numbers stand out or look a little bit more visually interesting. Possibly adding in little descriptors like a P or an F for a fax number or E for email, or actually spelling out the words that are there, making them a little bit smaller. So these are just possible ways to lay it out. Again, not required. I'm just giving you some options. And then, let me minimize that one. I've also included several different step-by-step tutorials, online tutorials that will walk you through how to click on YouTube and it'll actually show you the card. So you can see this one. It walks through how to set up the document, how to set up guides, how to start filling things with color and setting up the layers inside of Photoshop. So if you want to utilize Photoshop instead, it's fine. It's not my preferred go-to. I usually use InDesign, but that's my own preference. But if you want to give it a shot in Photoshop instead, I'm perfectly fine with that. Same thing here with this one. Turn the volume off of that for a second. With this one is using Illustrator and showing how to set up the actual document and adding in these different elements and pieces. So you can follow along with these. It doesn't have to look exactly the same, but it might give you some ideas of like, ooh, I like what they did with the fold. How do they do that? Let me go ahead and try that. So this is really much more freeform. I'm giving you access to things, but I'm not telling you explicitly how to put it together. But I am telling you, review over this because this is going to tell you what you have to have on the document. So that is what you're going to be working with. And I will show you in the next video how to set up your Illustrator file or your InDesign file and just give you some very, very quick tips on what to do.